Hello, good morning, good morning. What's today? Friday, June 26th. Happy birthday to my brother. Yesterday was my dad's birthday. Today's my brother's birthday. He's old, decrepit, you know, not really getting around much. Old guy, poor brother, no one loves him. Just terrible kind of, situation there. I'm just kidding. Just razzing my brother like always. Oh, I didn't write down today's number. Today's 4,900 days in a row of daily art. 100 more days and I hit 5K, 5,000 days. It's crazy. It is really crazy. Feels good. Feels real good. Okay. Today we're starting a new painting. If you look at my drafting board, there's nothing there. It's blank. That's it. Just have my value chart, which, you know what? I'm probably going to be throwing caution to the wind, getting rid of that today. Not worried about it. There's going to be a new reference up here. So this one we can hide right now. I have to change up that reference. But like always, I want to show you what I'm thinking about and why, kind of like the thought process that goes into me creating my next painting. It's always exciting for me. It's super exciting all the time to start on something new. I know there's a lot of us that look at like a blank canvas and we go, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? But I think because I've been doing this for so long all the time and like always on to the next painting, that has flipped like 180 degrees. Used to be like, oh, what am I going to do? I have no idea. I do this big painting, like all this kind of stuff that goes into it, blah, blah, blah. Now I really look forward to it, especially when I'm painting small and focusing on this kind of iterative approach. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun, definitely. So I have a lot of fun looking forward to my next painting on everything. And I want to take you through that process of what I'm thinking about, why I'm thinking about it. And I'm doing several things at once right now because the imagery that I'm going to be working with, I had to go ahead and crop it down, okay? Because I'm streaming not only on YouTube, but also on Twitch. And Twitch is like extremely strict as far as like nudity is concerned. Like even if it's just like a butt, and even if it's like blurred out of focus, they're like banned for 3 days, gone. They don't mess around with any of it, right? And even on YouTube, if they catch something that they don't like, even if it's painting or something, they'll say, hey, you're not being monetized on that video. And that's fine anyways. I probably make like $2 on each one of these videos, maybe if I'm lucky. I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it because I love it. So let's look at my screen first. Now, the last painting we did, I guess I should bring that up. Oops, let me go back to my face. Because if I open up like a folder somewhere and show a little bit of skin, the human body, oh my gosh. If I show a little bit of that, people, or at least the algorithms and everything, get really upset. And, gotta be careful with our overlords, right? Gotta be careful with those guys. So here was the last painting I did. And maybe the better thing is to show you the photos that I took of it yesterday. This will be fine. I can go in here without showing any kind of craziness. Right. So here is the finished painting. Let's go 100% on that. We'll go to there. I can even crop it down real quick so that I get more of it on screen. The thing about these streams is that, nope, wrong one. Things about these streams is you're not getting as many pixels as I would love for you to see. I'd love to be able to stream in 4K and like all this brilliance, but it's just not happening, right? So this is the painting that I worked on. It took me 7 days to do this little 6x9 painting. And I got so fiddly with everything. And this isn't the end of it, actually. I don't know where that image is because I did some other stuff to it. Actually, where is that image? Okay, you're going to be seeing a lot of different stuff here. Let's just go to, here you go, on Google. We're going to see it this way. There we go. So there's the image, the painting that I finished. So you can see where it's done. Yesterday I got really, and that was probably the impetus for this. Yesterday there was this whole face here that we can see on the previous version, right? So I had all of this information in the face, not a lot of information, still kind of faded out. That's intentional. A lot of brushy kind of stuff going on. But then yesterday I was like, you know what? I'm going to go for it and just remove most of that face. It's taking up too much, but I want to try and keep that nose, where the light on that nose is. And even though this is, it didn't turn out to be the best painting, not a super great painting, not super happy with it. I mean, sure, someone will love it, right? And think it's awesome. And that's fantastic. I love that. But I'm not super happy with it. And that's totally okay. Whenever we do a painting that we're not super happy with, it's fine. It's fine. Whatever. We can, and especially working in this kind of iterative approach of artwork, when we're on to the next, doing small paintings over and over again, I think it's even better in that way because we're not piling all this stuff on one painting like it has to be this or it has to be that. It's like, no, I do, hopefully 2 or 3 paintings a week. And that's what I want to get to, right? But the one thing that I did, blocking out this face and doing this thing where I really pushed it. I'm like, I did all of this work. I want to get rid of it. I pushed myself to do it. It was scary to do it, but it felt liberating at the end. And so I actually posted this painting. This is a painting of my friend Kristen. And can I get 100% on this? Look at this. Look at all that. I love this. I love it. I friggin' love it. It's fantastic. I was looking at this because I posted on my socials yesterday because it's ready for sale on my website, chrisbevan.com. Shameless promotion. And I was thinking, man, I want to be this expressive. I want to have this balance of caring about the drawing and yet not caring about the drawing at the same time. Because I remember what I did on this painting is I did work hard on the drawing to get things in the right place, quote unquote, right place, the correct place for me. But I was able to kind of depart from that in a lot of places and really just kind of scratch into the paint, move things around, say, it's generalized, it's expressive. It's more about the paint quality and more about the mark making and the paint quality and allowing the drawing to kind of get a little bit wonky in places, but not so much that it's super distracting. Like I can look at this painting and go, yeah, is it a perfect drawing of someone's face? No, right? It is not a perfect likeness of Kristen. I've done another painting of them that is a perfect likeness. And I probably screwed up their pronouns previously, but I did a previous painting of them that was very like them, looked exactly like them. This one not, because that's not the idea. And then also this painting here, I call Blinded. The coloration on that is not good, but also kind of the same idea where it's more about the expressiveness, about mark making, and allowing the drawing to kind of leave a little bit, to stay there. And its only purpose is just to not be distracting. Like it has to look like a somewhat well-formed head, but not so much that it pulls away from me being expressive, right? So that's what I want to kind of do now. It's like the ebb and flow of art making. We go like super tight and we're like all about detail because this is what is in our brain right now for this certain painting that we're doing. And then maybe on the next painting, we go, 180 degrees on it. And it brings up, a bigger conversations about who we are as artists on every single day. Galleries and things like that don't like this. They want you to do the same thing all the time. I love being able to go from a very subtly painted figure or portrait that has very subtle transitions, and it's all about, not about the brushwork, but more about representation of the figure, the portrait, exactly. And then the next day throwing nails at the canvas or the paper and just gouging things. I love going back and forth from that. Galleries don't like this. Traditional galleries, like I was talking about co-op galleries yesterday. You can do almost whatever you want in co-op galleries, in most of them, at least the ones I've been in. So this is where I'm moving to. And I'm going to go through some of these images that I'm going to talk about here. And this is kind of fun. Let me get rid of that and that. So this, what is it called? I need to bring it up. Art reference. This is from, I think it's from Satinezilla as well. It's called Couple Photo Reference Pack Volume 2. I think. I'm pretty sure. From Satinezilla. I'm not exactly sure where this is from. But I was looking at these images, and I knew that the one thing that I wanted to get, the one thing that I needed, was high contrast. And even though that these images, this image here is a great representation of it, even though this image here doesn't have like super high contrast. I mean, we could always change the contrast within Photoshop if we wanted. Like I could do this kind of thing, right? And really affect that contrast. Or, instead of doing that, I could just bump up the contrast there. If I wanted to. I don't want to do that. I don't want to do a digital contrast bump. I want to do that in my head while I'm painting. But I wanted direct sunlight, because direct sunlight always provides something like this painting. Actually, this is not direct sunlight. This is actually a handheld light that is very close to their face. This is sunlight, right? So we always get like a very, really bright lights and then deeper, darker shadows, right? And I love the high contrast. And when we're talking about expressiveness, we're talking about brushwork, we're talking about like kind of letting go. I feel that this contrast, this really bright, dark that we can get within this, these sharp transitions between the light and the dark that could be expressive and exact and kind of screaming at us a little bit, I think would be great. And so I was pulled to these images as I was going through my huge image bank of images. And the other thing about them is that checking the stream to make sure everything's okay. Like that's a problem with, this stream is doing too many things at once. I don't even have the stream up on YouTube. See if I could not. Yeah. Okay, good. I am streaming on YouTube. So just now checked it. But anyway, so the other thing I was looking at with these photos is just the sheer amount of information. There's 4 hands. In this one, there is 3 hands. In this one, 3 hands, 3 hands, and back to 4 hands. And we have vertical and horizontal representations too. Just small changes between them, really. Kind of like this one better than these two. But when we have so many hands, when we have all these fingers going everywhere, it's a lot of information, number one, but it's a lot of chances to get into light to dark, single brushstroke for this finger, multiple brushstrokes for that finger, a lot of energy, a lot of things happening within the photo, within the reference, right? There's a lot going on here. And especially being 6:9, like if I go into here, image size, and I change this to be actually 6:9 inches digitally without resampling, it will tell me, if I do this, like what an inch looks like. So 7, 8, 9. Here's an inch, right? Which is pretty small. Like if I move this inch around here, it did, I'm going to be using a small brush or maybe a big brush for this whole thing. So it's going to be a lot of detail in a very small area, but then also bringing in this idea of this kind of texture, this kind of brushwork. Now, the eye of Kristen here was pretty darn small. All of this stuff is small, so I know I can do it. I know I can bring this expressiveness in within these little small areas, so it's possible. But on this level, I'm not sure. I am not sure. So cropping is going to be a very important part of this. These are a little bit more interesting. I do like the horizontal. I love painting vertically for some reason. I think for some reason it feels good to me. I think it's a little bit more contemporary, especially when you go like a 1:2 scale. It looks more like cell phone size. And we're all used to cell phones being very contemporary in some way. So it kind of speaks to us now, right, in this contemporary age. But I like these, even though they're horizontal, because of that kind of light and arms that go across at an angle, a diagonal across the picture plane. More interest, more, and I'm not showing my screen. See, that transition back and forth is getting me. Hey, Matthew, how you doing? Okay, so hands, a lot of hands here. I forget where I left off. Oh my gosh, terrible stream, Chris, terrible stream. So here's the inch. There's a ton of information on this vertical one. This is like what I was talking about, where I enjoy the verticality of it because it's a little bit more contemporary. But I also like these horizontal ones because the diagonal of shapes going across, these two are almost exactly the same. Like barely any difference between them. I like this one better, mainly because of this little triangle of color or lighter color there. That's really nice. But I want to pack the image with possibility, pack it with movement, pack it in with all this stuff going on. And I want to go for it. I want to try it. And I don't want to start with a graphite drawing. I don't want to start with a graphite drawing at all. I'm going to get rid of that one. I think I've already decided to not do the verticals. And then these two are almost exactly the same. I like this one specifically for that this little area. It adds another piece of interest where this just turns into, just skin. So we'll get rid of that. And we'll get rid of this. Quick choice. Quick choice, What I can also do is bring in even more of this movement by cropping it down a bit more. Like even cropping into the major parts of the hands. Like you can take almost any part of the human body and crop it in pretty close and end up with a very abstract looking painting, which is very interesting. So if the focus is on mark making, on action, not so much on, perfect representation of a naturalist approach of, this, representing hands and arms and things like that, we can crop further in and get a little bit closer to this kind of abstract notion of just focusing on the mark making itself and the paint. It's going to be a big idea of paint, honestly. Yeah, and I changed the angle of this, just cropping it in with the cropping tool, change the angle so it's a bit more, let's back it up. I want it small. Looking at compositions, when you start a composition, looking at it in a very small way, like a notan or something like that, is very important. Another thing that you can do that's really interesting, and what I'm going to do is copy this layer so we get a copy of it. This is in Photoshop, by the way. I am showing my screen now. That's good. You can go to filter gallery, and I love this cutout filter because you can say, let's just do 5 levels. Let's not simplify. Maybe go to 4 levels. Yeah, there we go. See how we can simplify an image pretty quickly and then back away from that to see like the bigger areas of light and dark. This tells me right away when I'm looking at this image that the bottom left here, big area of darkness with this kind of triangle of light underneath those fingers. And then on the right side is this big area of lightness. I'm not going to paint from this, but it gives me an idea of, because this is how Photoshop interprets this, right? I can interpret it much better than Photoshop can in my own way, my sensibilities. But when a computer does it in some way, it's kind of nice to see how that's done and kind of get a different idea, those bigger shapes on things, and then utilize that to improve the composition. So right away, when I see that or see this, it could bring the composition together a bit more if I just remove this whole lighter area down at the bottom left, make it all dark. That could possibly improve the composition. Yeah. And, I'm not going to do it here because actually what I should do, I'm going to go ahead and go back into that filter cutout, and it doesn't remember my settings. That's fine. There, that's enough. So I can go back and forth from these two. See how it simplifies everything when I just click back and forth. The other way you could do this is just, go very small. Then you can also do a filter over this that turns it black and white. So filter, black and white. So we get a black and white look at it. I can also do a filter for contrast. Where's that at? Brightness and contrast, and really blow out that contrast. Darken it up some too. I love how digital means, like, if we're okay with working with digital things, it can give us like quick ideas of generalizations. As much as we can, I would say not to copy from this. I'm going to go Control-Shift-S to save this in projects. I'm going to call this Let Go. And this is something that I really like about this. It just kind of came to me, right? I as far as my painting on this, I want to let go. I want to let go with all this detail and just be expressive as I can. Be expressive. So I'm going to let go as far as, the artist looking at this image and letting go of all of the exactness and just be expressive. I'm going to let go, but it's also hands grabbing onto hands and wrists. Like, is there some kind of commentary or other kind of narrative in there where the person or people are talking about let go? I like that kind of meld between the two. It's really interesting. Okay, so the next thing, now that we have our image figured out, hey, Doobie the Cat, if you blue your eyes, it looks normal. Blur your eyes. Oh yeah, if you do a squint, yeah, it looks normal. Yeah, totally. Like squinting your eyes to help kind of look at the bigger shapes of things, the bigger idea, 100%. Squinting, especially when you're painting, definitely when you're painting. So, well, I'm not done there yet. Not done yet. Let me go into my folders on Google Drive. What I'm going to do is make a new Google document. I know I'm not showing this right now. I'll get to it in a second. Like go heading. Okay. So what I'm doing here is something I talk about, a lot, and I need to get back into it because last painting, I didn't really make a lot of notes for every day that I worked. And I think it's important to do this. So why the heck do I want to do this painting? And, this is important for me. I could probably make this larger so you can see it. Why the heck do we want to do these paintings? And I want to let go of exact representation, right? The exact representation. Okay. I want to be expressive with brushwork. Let the drawing die a bit. There we go. And the other thing I'm thinking about is, let me see, 0 V. No. I want to do like a quick screen capture from these paintings and throw those in here as, you know, something that I'm referencing. And this will be a document that I always come back to. I should always come back to, especially at the end of every day. Every time I'm doing, you know, a day or some timed work on this painting, I need to come back here and say, you know, talk about what happened during the day, what I learned, what I didn't learn, you know, things like this. And I go day 1, and today is June 26th. 26. Okay. And then I'll make notes on things every day. Why is that important? Why are you talking about this stuff, Chris? Come on, man. We just want to like learn to paint. We want to watch you paint. Stop with all this stuff. This is so important. This is super important. I mean, these kind of things no one talks about, right? And it is, in my opinion, the most important thing. And I get I get funny on all this kind of things because I feel strongly about it, right? And not a lot of people feel strongly about it because I think there's this tendency for a lot of artists or a lot of creators like this that get onto YouTube and things like that. And the first thing that they ask is like, what do people want? What's going to make me money? What can I do that's derivative from everything else that's out there just to get, you know, butts in the seats, right? You're not going to get that from me. You're going to get someone that's coming in here and that is talking to you about the foundational elements of making art that's going to give you, I think, in my opinion, things that I've learned over the decades of me being an artist that have created an environment and a consistency and a habit of doing art that is like unbreakable. And even though my paintings could be, you know, good and bad, you know, I'm not like the best painter out there. I'm kind of running the mill, you know, totally not the best painter out there whatsoever. But the one thing that I feel that I have mastered, you know, whatever that means, everybody wants to throw that word around, is the habit of art, showing up every single day regardless. And I have mastered that. So I feel like I'm a, what do you call it, professional as far as that's concerned. You know, maybe not in my painting, but everything else as well. So I'm going to talk to you about this stuff. So writing that down, okay, and then the next thing I do is I have my iPad here, but I'm not going to put my code, not going to put my code in on stream like I did the other day. Not that I think anybody can get to this iPad and do anything with it, but you never know. You never know. So I use Google Drive. The great thing about Google Drive or iCloud or whatever you like to use is whenever I'm, you know, adjust those images and put them up on a folder, I can bring them up here, which I only have the PSD, so I need to go back to my computer, save this as a JPEG. Forgot about that. So I save as a JPEG. Okay, let go. Okay, no, let go. Painting. Okay. Save, and that should appear here in a second. Appear. Go. Do it now. Google Drive's like, no. Okay, there it goes. So here's the JPEG, right? So this is the image that we cropped exactly from the photo. I didn't do any adjustments to it as far as like contrast or whatever. I want to do that in my head. I want all of that to be personal to me. I don't want to look at Photoshop and go, oh, I like this filter and how it looks, and I'm just going to paint from the filter. I don't really like that. I think that's like a great way to undermine your creativity, is to lean on those tools way too much. So I'm going to open this in Procreate. This is an old iPad. It's like a Generation 2 iPad. So I love Procreate, but the battery just goes dead pretty quickly in Procreate. But I like that I can change the zoom on this to however I want it on Procreate. And so this is going to sit next to me over here on the left. Okay. And I'm going to be setting up my entire table here. Now, the one thing that I can't show on stream, or I didn't show on stream, and this is 140-pound watercolor paper, hot press from Fluid is the brand. Honestly, if I buy more watercolor paper, I have a whole stack of watercolor paper, the next thing I'll do is get like a 300-pound. I mean, you can see how straight this is. It's really straight. Let me go, boom, just a little bit of curve in it. But and the reason why it's just got a little bit of curve is because I put one coat of PBA size on one side and one coat on the other. Last painting, I had 2 coats on the front, 1 coat on the back. And yeah, it may not dry. I think it was having some trouble with drying. Don't know why. Can't tell you why on that. I was talking about that yesterday or the other day. Sometimes you do a painting, like it's the same exact materials and everything, and then, could be the weather, could be the surface, something's a little bit different, and the paint's like, I don't feel like drying. I'm just going to sit here for forever and never dry. Not sure. It's happened to me a couple times. I've lost, 3 to 5 paintings because of that. Another reason why painting small is pretty good, that I like a lot, painting small, because there isn't this huge problem if I lose a painting. 6x9 painting that it took a couple days on, maybe 4 or 5 hours, that's fine, whatever. So right there, the other thing I like to do when I'm setting up my paper, and this is me being stupid and kind of specific, is I want it to be level. So I got this little level here that I do that with, and then I tape it down. This, the entire paper is going to be the painting. I don't have like a extra margin around it. So I do like this double-sided blue tape on the back, and then, do that thing, make these little tabs, and it holds it there nicely. And then my palette really close. And now I need to set up the camera a bit better. I'm using primer to coat paper. Do you need to coat both sides? The only reason why you do both sides, you don't need to do both sides. If you do both sides, it'll straighten out the paper. Like you coat one side, and that wetness on the front is going to change the fibers of the paper so that they get tighter on one side and they stay the same on the other side. So it will bow. Almost anything that's made out of wood, like paper, pulpy stuff, is going to do that. But if you put a coat on the other side, you get the tightness of the fibers similar on both sides, and it straightens out. So that's the reason why to do that, coating both sides. You don't have to do it, but I like to work on it straight so it's not all bouncy. Sometimes it gets bouncy anyways. Okay, and now we're ready to go. Oh, it can go to the left a bit. So I have this camera off to the right. Doobie says, oh, makes sense. I triple coat one side. It's nice and round now. Yeah, totally. When you say primer, what kind of primer do you use? Let me know what primer do you use, like acrylic gesso or PVA size or GAC 100, or I've even used, you go to the hardware store and you get this actual primer called Kilz, Kilz, which is like a primer for like concrete and homes and things like that. Used that before. Worked really well. It's like hardcore stuff. You can get it in gray, white, and black. Yeah, acrylic gesso. Awesome. Yeah, I painted on acrylic gesso for forever. It's nice. It does leave some texture. So you know, if you're painting on, if you do canvas and then you do one coat of gesso, you're still going to have a lot of that canvas texture showing through. So it's hard to get details within that that's not showing canvas texture. So painting, if you're painting small, I would suggest multiple coats of gesso and sanding in between. That way it gets really smooth. It's the main reason why I paint on paper, because I want the smooth surface. I'm painting small and I want to be able to get the exactness of that brushwork, those strokes that are in there, without the interruption of the texture of the canvas that I'm working on. Now, I've even used GAC 100 on paper, which is a clear acrylic coat from Golden. That's perfect for, like, if you draw out on the paper, then you use the GAC 100 because it's clear. It's basically like a clear acrylic, right? And that's great, but it leaves this brush texture, right? Just like gesso. I've even done gesso on paper. Also leaves brush texture, so sanding is kind of required for both of those to get it pretty smooth and to remove that texture completely. Or if you love that, keep the texture. If you're like, no, I'm painting very expressively and I don't care about that, you know, that's fine. But definitely look at your paintings after they're done, and what you do is you put like a light like right above them, like it rakes across the canvas, right? And what kind of texture do you see? Do you see more of the gesso or the surface texture than the details that you want on your painting? If you do, then a flatter surface will be better. Now, other thing I want to do, like, this is my Zorn palette. The Zorn palette, not my Zorn palette. Titanium white, yellow ochre, cadmium red hue, and then ivory black. But I want to bring in some more colors on this. As far as blues are concerned, I'm totally fine. Am I fine with just the ivory black and white? I think I want to add in an ultramarine blue, just a little bit. I don't have, like, I'm using a Rembrandt ultramarine blue. I'm going to put this way off to the side. These are like extended colors. Like, my main standard palette is the Zorn palette. And then when I need it, I'll extend these colors, extend the palette with colors that I want. But only when I need that, right? Like if I'm painting a landscape or something, like I'm going out with Urban Sketchers, definitely will add these two colors, which is the ultramarine blue, and this is a lemon yellow hue by Phoenix Artist Oils. Did a review on Phoenix Artist Oils on my YouTube channel, so check that out. And then I'm going like crazy with all different brands, right? Oh, this is the problem with this brand. It's terrible. Love it and hate it at the same time. This is M. Graham, Alizarin Crimson. And M. Graham is a great paint. It's a professional paint. It's not too expensive. It's around the same kind of pricing, depending on where you're at, as Winsor & Newton and other professional brands, right? But the difference between this and like Winsor & Newton and especially Gamblin is it has a very low viscosity to it. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. Like, the paint separates from the oil a lot. And if I put it directly on this palette, it's going to run down the palette. So what I have to do, trying to get the mic in the perfect position, I have to go like this on my paper towel and get a lot of that initial oil out of the tube because it's separated at the top. And then now, hopefully, it goes on well. You know, I talk to a lot of artists about oil paint, and everyone has opinions on oil paint. And 99% of the time, actually 100% of the time that I've talked to anybody about their preferences in oil paint, and when they say, I don't like this paint and I like that paint, it has everything to do with viscosity. So if like you hate Gamblin because it's too thick, you could add medium to it, or you could go to M. Graham and it has the thinness you want right out of the tube. You don't need any medium, right? Like there's this constant talk about medium just to get the paint to move around the way you want. The other choice is just going with a different brand, right? Omark Comics 911. How to avoid color blending or get muddy. Oh, just random questions, just jumping in there. That's cool. My paintings get muddy. How to avoid it? Even I know why. Maybe you're saying I don't know why. I'm probably not the best person to talk about that because I don't mind grays. Muddy color. What does that mean? We have to define what muddy color is, right? Right out of the tube, not muddy. That's as intense of saturation as you can get, right? So we have the Zorn palette up here, then my extra colors that I'm working with only for this painting. Right out of the tube is going to be as saturated and pure vibrance as you can get, right? Now, if we look at it like a color chart, this is my Zorn color chart. This is yellow ochre right here, this line, and then mixed with cadmium red as we go over, cadmium red light here, mixed with ivory black as we go over. Now, if you look at this, we could say muddy color there because we got cadmium red mixed with ivory black. You know, it's a little muddy, whatever that means, right? Here it gets a bit muddier, like down here is a bit more muddier because these are ivory black, cadmium red, plus a little bit of yellow ochre. So all three of those colors are mixed into here. So defining what mud is the number one thing that you have to know in order to stay away from mud. Okay. So when you say you don't want mud, you're saying that you want pure, unsaturated colors, which is very difficult to do, especially when you're talking about, changing values of things. And I just realized my reference isn't up. Let's get this going again. I need to change that to the new painting that I'm working on. Pen. Ooh, it's tiny. There we go. Here's the new reference. Actually, I'm going to make this really big so I can talk about colors real quick. So you cannot paint this painting exactly the way it is using paints right out of the tube. Look at, the yellow. This yellow here, that red there, right? The blue, the alizarin crimson versus everything in that painting. All these colors will have to get, neutralized a little bit. So you're adding, black or white, or it's opposite color, it's complementary. So if I want to neutralize yellow, I'm going to add an orange into it, or not an orange. Oh my gosh. What's the opposite of yellow? You add red and blue together, you get purple. There you go. There's your opposite, right? And that will make that yellow gray muddy. We get into that kind of muddy thing. I don't like that terminology because, I'm expressing that terminology that way because it is inconsistent and it's not objective enough, right? What does muddy mean? And when we say we don't know how to be unmuddy with our paintings because we don't know what muddy means or what the opposite of that is. Now, if you are trying to paint something that's exactly like it is, like you want to get a yellow that goes into shadow. Okay, so we have this like lemon yellow here, super, super bright yellow. Okay, and as it passes into shadow, we can maybe go a little bit like a yellow ochre to it. So it gets, it's still somewhat saturated, still somewhat saturated there, but gets a little darker, but that's not dark enough for our shadow, right? So we go, what else can I add to this? Well, if I add a blue, it's going to get darker, but more green. Is the shadow more green? Not really. If I add another darker value like the alizarin crimson, that will get darker, but this will turn into, what does it turn into? So like a really bright kind of, reddish thing. So it's darker, but way too intense, right? Super intense color. So we say, no, that's not working. I need something a bit more neutralized. Let's go with black. It's going to get a little bit more green. Nope, needs to be warmer. Let's add in a little bit more red. And then all of a sudden, crap, we're into mud, right? Because we've added 3 colors into one. But we need to bring the value down. Like the shadow was cast, we got the bright side of this object here within all this like crazy bright yellow, but then a shadow's cast or it goes into a shadow and it's going to get into that kind of color, right? Definitely. The best thing that you can do and it is to, well, not the best thing you can do, but one of the things you can do is be okay or understand how paint works and be okay with like that transition, Let's start with this painting to kind of give you some more understanding of that, because muddiness is part of life, honestly. Now, you can do the Van Gogh, okay? You can do Van Gogh where it's just like right out of the tube, intense, 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 all over the place. Now, Van Gogh's paintings are very flat as well, super flat paintings. Look at a Van Gogh painting. He's even pulled shadows out. Like the famous painting of Van Gogh where it's his room that he lived in, there's no cast shadows. Why did he do that? I mean, he knows what he's doing. He knew what he's doing. He's like, I'm not putting any shadows in here. That would darken it up too much. Brightened it up like crazy. Also flattened everything out. So this super intensity of everything. But we have to like change value if we want representation, or if we want to flatten everything out, we can do the Van Gogh on things. I'm not going to be doing that here, right? So when we talk about muddy, it's the combination of a whole bunch of colors together, a whole bunch of colors right out of the tube. It gets muddy. I know we're trying to get to that value range that we want in the darker areas. Usually that's where it gets most muddy. But what we can do is, kind of like I was doing with the yellow and the alizarin crimson, we can say, okay, I don't want mud. I want intense color. So let's go for value, but I'm going to represent that value as intensely as I can. And you're going to get something that's very different than the images that you're looking at. The nice thing that what's actually a lot of fun, and you got me on a tangent here, but I think it's good because it can give me an understanding here. Let's look at this painting. I'm going to just blow it up really big. And I'm going to create a new layer. I love doing this. And I'm going to get this color picker out, okay? Now, the great thing, I mean, this is not exact. This is not an exact science, okay? Because your screen, if you're painting from a screen, it is not paint. It will never be paint. And you will never be able to achieve what you see on your screen, okay? Like this super bright, this light here, these are pixels that are shining light into your eye. It's like little tiny light bulbs, it is light. It is not reflected light. Now, oil paint reacts very differently. Light hits that oil paint, reflects off of titanium white and hits you in the eye. It's going to be much more dull than an actual light bulb you're looking at. Okay, it's going to happen. The only way you can get close to that is with transparent paint. But just wanted to make that clear that this is not an exact science and it's a bit different. What you need to know about these color pickers, if you do this on Photoshop like I'm doing right now, on the very far left, everything on the left is as gray as you can get. Super neutral. Everything on the right is super, if I go to the red, like super saturated. Even though it's darker, See, if I go into this like darker red, it's the most saturated dark red that we can get. That could be like the alizarin crimson that's added to like black or something. It'll get darker, but still be very intense. So when I'm looking at my reference and I'm looking right here, see, this is pretty intense. It's reflected light. It's skin reflecting to skin. Pretty intense. That's what I feel. But when I look here, it's like right in the middle as far as saturation is concerned. It's not all the way to the left with gray, not all the way to the right with super saturation. And I can even hit OK, get out my brush. It's probably a huge brush. Yep. And I can just go bam. Nope. Let's do a hard edge on that brush. There we go. That's the color there. And when we look at it in this kind of bigger shape, right? And I can hold Alt and start picking other colors. Like this may be really intense right there. Maybe let's look at the vein that's in this hand. Now watch this. Look how gray that is. I knew it was going to be very gray, super gray. Like this background, light, but just as gray as far as the intensity. If I go back to our color picker and I look at these like digitally, like that background is almost nothing. It's just nothing but gray. Here we get a little bit more intense from moving to the right. Same there. And then mid to the right. There's nothing that's all the way to the right here, right? If I pick this color, move it all the way to the right so it's super intense, and then put it on there, garish. I mean, compared to everything else, this red is garish. This is cadmium red right out of the tube. And we tend to want to do that. We tend to want to get way too saturated with everything, but life is not that saturated. It's honestly not. And what was super interesting was one day I took a photo of, an orange cone that you would see. Let me go back to art and face. An orange cone that you would see like that they would put out for construction or something. And I'm like, that has to be super intense. And then I brought it into Photoshop to look at how intense it was. And it wasn't the maximum intensity that you could get. It's pretty close to it, but not. So when you talk about muddy colors, it's all about that intensity. And when you're asking me about it, an artist that loves grays, I love the grays. I love playing with the grays. I love balancing all of these like kind of tonal grays with everything else. Like I'm making up a very grayish purple here. This will probably be the base for this painting. I see a lot of purple grayish tones within here. And then I'll balance that with where the intensity is and play around with that. Intentionally make the muddy colors so that they make the other colors look more and more intense. Hopefully that's helpful. There's a ton of word salad there, but hopefully that's helpful. Now, what am I doing as far as this painting's concerned? I'm establishing a bigger idea here of somewhat drawing, but like I said, I mean, there's a bunch of hands. There's all kinds of stuff going on here. I know that if I don't get into all of like the measuring and things like this, that these hands are not going to be perfect. And right away, I'm saying to myself, I don't care. That's not the purpose of this painting. I'm going to let drawing go. I feel like I have enough drawing skill to grab everything that I need for this. And the major focus for this painting, the major importance for this is expressiveness, mark making, and it's more about paint than it is representing exactly what I see. Yeah, so I'm letting go. I'm letting go of that exactness. I'm letting go of accuracy to think more about how the paint looks. And this is the kind of thing where when we think expressiveness, when we think abstract expressionism, we think we see those videos in our head of Jackson Pollock, and he's got a paint can over the canvas that's on the floor, and he's, dipping into it and just tossing the paint around, right? And that's what we think about. We think about Matisse with the super long brush that's like 10 feet long, and just doing these like really quick, crazy strokes, right? But a lot of times expressiveness can be done intentionally and slowly. The the most important thing is that the brush work looks that way, not how fast you move your hands, right? Although I'm moving my hands pretty quickly here. The direct light is glowing subsurface scattering because the skin bounces the light from inside. Yeah, definitely 100%. Like, especially in the tips of fingers, you'll see that right in that transit. But you'll also see it. It's not subsurface scattering all the time. In skin, you see that a lot. In surfaces, or what do you call it? Materials that have a translucency to them, definitely subsurface scattering. Like your ear, put a light behind your ear, behind a head, you'll get like super orange ears for Caucasian individuals, right? But what I find really interesting, that's part of this as well, and what Monet really loved, was that transition from light to dark right before you get to the Terminator and the shadow. The color would get really intense. It was so interesting how you have like intense color there. And I've noticed through observation in a lot of images that I've seen, that the colors tend to get more intense as they go into shadow, which is interesting. And that's kind of what I was talking about before, Mark. I'm going to call you Omar, or just Mark. No, Omar. Sorry. That's kind of like what I was talking about before, Omar, which was when objects go into shadow and you have to neutralize it, because usually, in most instances, the shadows will be a little bit more neutral than the lighter side of things, and you begin to neutralize that paint. But I think you can get away with more intense colors in the shadows. Just focus deeply on the value first. And it really doesn't matter what color you use at that point. As long as your values are right on, it'll still look like a face or a head or a coffee cup or whatever that you're painting, because you have those values right on. So try to go and keep your mixture simple as possible. So don't go for tertiary or 4 mixtures of paint into your piles that you're mixing up. Try to just stay with 2, right? And maybe a very clean tertiary where it's just 3 colors, but maybe they're analogous, so that it's a bunch of warmth right within it. As soon as you start crossing, across the color wheel into complementary colors, you're going to start graying things out as well. So you'll lose a lot of that. So I'm drawing this out. And one thing I like to do, you can see like that hand, the masculine looking hand. I like doing this across the knuckles, like knuckle, 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 right? Like these knuckles here. And then there's always this shape where you have these knuckles here, and then the third set of knuckles too. But if you look at that general shape in hands, and it's interesting because their pinky finger, the knuckle goes way up there. So I can generalize that placement pretty easily, which is nice. And then, kind of make a mitten of these hands. Mitten. Yeah. And that might be all I need. That might be everything I need. There's a confusion of fingers here. That's fine. Let's get confused. Let's stay with confusion. And where do I want to start? I feel here is where I want to start. Let's start with a bit more intense purple. Okay. Oh, the other thing you have to think about, Omar, and I know a lot of artists forget this, or don't think about it, not forget it. And maybe not a lot of artists do this, but Titanium white will always neutralize a color. You probably already know it. I'm sorry for saying that. I'm just going to assume that no one knows anything and be a jerk. I apologize. But always think of white as a neutralizer. If you have this color wheel, and usually when we see color wheels, the center is still a very bright color, but in the center of your color wheel, there's either a tint, a tone, or a shadow. Tint would be all those colors go to the center and get white added to them. It's a neutralizing tint, so they get lighter, but they also get neutral. The tone is a gray in the center, so everything gets grayer in the center because gray is added to it, and a shade is black in the center. But all of those things, you start neutralizing. And even if you do, let's say you have red on one side and then you add its complementary green on the other, in the center it will be gray because you're adding those complementaries. So that's what I mean about, when you start mixing across the color wheel, you're going to get muddy, neutralized colors, right? Because maybe you want to do that. But also when you add a white to there, you're going to neutralize as well. It does lighten it, but it also neutralizes. Look how intense that looks. Super intense. I think it's way too intense. I'm going to gray it out. Just looking at this palm. Now, the one thing that I want to try and do here is keep all of my lightest lights in this painting clear of paint. The great thing about the surface I'm working on, 140-pound hot press watercolor paper with PVA size 1 coat, just 1 coat. I can scrape back pretty far. You can see how far I can get back to the paper, but it does stain the paper. Now, if I did 2 coats of PVA size, it would be even more white. There would be less staining there. But within those whiter areas, I want to be able to get back to something even lighter than that. So I want to be careful about how, where I put this paint in some instances so I can keep that white. So thinking about letting go, but also within reason. Like, where's that balance? Where is that balance I'm trying to find? A little bit of like cad red would be nice here. And being very light with these strokes right now, which I don't want to be. I want to be more, I want to let go more. Let go of that drawing a little bit more. It's okay. You can get it back, Chris. You can get it back. It's going to make a terrible painting. Hey, Chris. Chris says, hi, Chris. Glad you're here. I'm on the process of letting go and going to make a bad painting intentionally. And it's fine to say that. I'm like, yeah. A lot of times when we do something different and new that we've never done before, people are like, oh, why are you doing that? Why are you intentionally making a bad painting? Because you just let things go and you go, it's okay. I don't care about the vanity of how I look on these streams. Look at me. It isn't like I'm some person that's relying upon someone coming to my stream because of the way I look. That's not happening. And also, I don't care about how these paintings are going to look. I want this to be more blue. I mean, I do within reason, right? But in this instance, oh, look at that blue. That's great, that grayish blue. In this instance, I'm letting go. I'm saying it's okay. And, when I look at this kind of blue that I just put down, and then I quickly look over at the hand, the masculine hand that's up there at the top, feels green to me. A lot of times we'll get kind of these moments where we're looking at something and it just, if we're cognizant of the way things feel, we'll go green, like it's almost subconscious. Look at that muddy color, Omar. See, that's pretty muddy because I added just about everything into that. It gets muddy, and that's fine. It's good here. needs to be a bit more of a cooler green. So that and that, but too intense. So I could add a red to it, but I'm going to add black to gray it out. Bam. Get something a little bit closer. Still too intense. My goodness, let's add a red to it to really gray it out. See, I went across the color wheel there, grayed it out. Then add some white for the lighter side, even more gray, but still has that kind of greenish idea about it right in that hand. And I'm going to warm it up, darken it up for the shadow side. Bam, top of that hand. That's all I need. Sorry for my question. The ambient light is bouncing off the dark area. If the direct light is strong, the ambient light will appear more, and it depends on the surface that bounces off from it. Yeah, 100%. That makes sense. Yeah, subsurface scattering is fun. Could probably do a whole painting on just all of that alone, just how translucent objects just interpret light through their transparency. It was kind of what I was, well, no, it wasn't kind of what I was trying to do on the last painting. The last painting was reflected light. Reflected light from skin to skin improves intensity. You get a lot more intensity. So here in this hand, a lot more red. And I don't care about drawing. Let's not worry about the drawing. And then I want to try something here because I was talking about keeping those lighter areas right where that light hits these fingers. There's a finger. There's a finger, right? Bringing it back. Still a bit stained there, right? But I think it's okay. Bright, intense gray, okay? And then also I want a more intense kind of orange. I'm looking at this reflected light here. It's like this arm is kind of, or the hand is reflecting on the back of another figure. Is it super intense on my palette? No, but I think it's going to look pretty intense there. Yes, it does. It's all relative, right? Color is relative. Depends on what it's next to. I love the saying, a banana on the lawn at midnight is not yellow. It's not. I'll try to imagine the room is full of bounce light. Right. Yeah, that'd be kind of cool. You get reflected light everywhere? That'd be pretty interesting. It'd be very bright painting, definitely. A bunch of reflected light everywhere. That'd be kind of cool. Love to see it. Do it. Have fun with it. This is what the art thing is. I love doing those kind of things where we go, what if? And then we go off in some crazy tangent. Not only do we make an interesting painting, or maybe we don't, but we learn a lot about ourselves doing that. What if I did a painting where it was just nothing but reflected light everywhere? Like, let's get rid of all shadows. All deep shadows are gone. And let's just talk about reflected light. Now, the one thing that I'm thinking about that I did not establish when I was talking about this painting, when writing it out, was focal point. And I wonder if I want to even think about that. If I want to have a focal point. I think I do. I really do. And the reason why is because if I have a focus, if I have something that's intentional, where I want to direct the viewer to look at, it's going to inform the rest of the painting on how the painting of everything else goes. Yeah. So I'll have to think about where that is. Right now, I'm just establishing some fun stuff. Are you using cold press paper? No, this is hot press watercolor paper. So very smooth. It's 140-pound hot press watercolor paper. And it's got one coat of PVA size on the front by Gamblin and one coat on the back just to straighten it out. But you can do 2 coats to make it really non-absorbent if you want. And you could use like a, what's interesting, like gesso, acrylic gesso is much more absorbent than the clear acrylic, what do they call it, binder or whatever, from called GAC 100 from Golden. That is much less absorbent than acrylic gesso, because I think acrylic gesso usually has, oh, not plaster, some kind of ground up dust, I think, and so it makes it more absorbent. That was a purple, and I want something more brownish, black, yellow ochre. What neutralizes purple? Yellow. Black makes it darker. I wanted it neutralized. Bam, there you go. Neutralize that yellow like, or that purple like crazy. So I have intense, 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 somewhat intense. Down here, definitely not the focus. There's two hips here and a lighter area of background. But as I was talking about at the beginning, I moved my iPad over. I want to get rid of this. I want this all to kind of go into one thing. So all together. Don't want it that dark though. Want it lighter. Like if anything, as far as focal point that I know, that area is not important at all. Not important at all. And that must be my wife texting me. Oh no. Okay. That's my friend Josh texting me while I'm on a stream. Thanks, Josh, interrupting my stream. Just kidding. So need more white. That's a thing when you get an expressive, start using up all kinds of paint right away. And it's fine, especially when I'm using, well, perfect time for asking that question. Especially when I'm using, yes, I am using oils, and these are Winsor Newton Winton brand oils. So inexpensive student grade, quote unquote, student grade oils. I love them. I think they're fantastic. I can get opaque reds and yellows and hues. They don't have the pigment load that professional brands do, definitely. But I've used these next to more expensive brands like Michael Harding, and it's like, I can't really tell the difference. All I can tell the difference in is the tremendous price of them. So definitely this is traditional oils. I'm not using water mixable. I stopped using water mixable. I still have them. I'll go back to them at some point because all the water was splaying out my brushes, my cheap brushes that I didn't want to be splayed out. That's another thing. I use very inexpensive brushes too. I like painting it inexpensively. I don't like spending a lot of money to make paintings. I can make good paintings, good, quote unquote, good paintings with inexpensive materials. So this whole area, poof, just get rid of it. Just, it doesn't matter. That's the hips. It's all about these hands, all about that expressiveness. This arm though, that's going across, like I even have some of that red hitting that arm, and it'll be fine. It'll be fine. I want to keep that as light and close to the paper as possible. I want to be able to scrape into it. I want to see how intense this is here. This will be too intense, I bet. Yeah, it needs to be a little bit closer to purple with black and white in it to kind of grade out a bit more. Yeah, perfect. Right there. So that's the underside of that arm. Twisted Art Lady, hi. Welcome. Welcome. It's just me making a bad painting today. Quote unquote bad painting. I'm thinking about expressiveness, thinking about the way the paint goes down. I'm not thinking about drawing as much as I can, right? I could sit here and get really detailed with all these fingers, all the craziness that happens within these hands. But today, in this painting, and this painting will not be finished today, definitely guarantee that. But for this painting, I'm letting go. I want to let go and think more about the paint itself and just expressing in different ways. And as I'm moving through this, I'm looking at little moments and things that happen, and I'm translating that into value number one, color. When I say color, I mean saturation. And then I don't even think about hue any longer. I think more about temperature, warm or cool, intense or less intense. And if it's warm, is it more of a reddish warm, or like a cadmium red, or a alizarin crimson warm, which is a cooler warm color? Yeah, that makes sense. Cooler warm color, Chris. Yeah, but it is. I mean, look, it's more blue than that, right? It's getting closer to blue. When it gets cooler, I'm thinking, is it closer to green or blue, right? Something like that. So just temperature, and as far as hue is concerned, like all of this background behind this hand, don't care, don't care, don't care. You know, it doesn't matter. It can be back there. It would be nice if a lot of these initial kind of crazy strokes that I create can last till the end of the painting. Like they just sit there and they do enough as they are. Like they're expressive, they have feeling to them, but they are also close enough to what I'm trying to describe that they can stay. Like hopefully I don't have to touch them that much. It's something that I begin to see within paintings all the time, where the more you work them, the less expressive, the less interesting they become. I know we've all kind of come to that moment when we're doing a painting or a drawing or something, and we're like, oh, I've overworked it. It just feels too stiff, right? So staying away from that stiffness. So Omar asks, should the brush be expensive, or I can use cheap brushes? Yeah, you can use cheap brushes. This brush here, Omar, Artsmith. Now, I got it from the what was it called? Joann Fabric here. Now, Joann Fabric is just like a fabric store. Like, why do they have brushes? But I got it from there, and I bought a pack of like 50 for like $10, right? Or something, maybe cheaper. It works out to be a few cents per brush, and I love them. I also have, you can't, that went out of business, but you have Nick Pro are pretty good. I got those off of Amazon. Those are inexpensive. If you want to go expensive, Rosemary and Company brushes. This is their ivory curved long. They're expensive brushes. I barely use those. Find cheap brushes. I use all synthetic brushes. I like synthetic brushes. So I think, those are my preferences. But at the same time, like, how do you paint, right? What do you work with? Are you like super detailed painter, like in there with little 2-hair brush or something like that? Maybe more expensive brushes are going to help you make your painting process more enjoyable, right? And that's what it comes down to. Like every time I talk to other artists about their preferences, it's so subjective. And that subjectivity comes out of years or months or a long time, most of the time, of understanding themselves through all these paintings. And they've learned, oh, this is what I like to do. And it's no different with me. Like I'll say, this is what I use. And it's because that I've moved through it for so many years, and it's what I like. But I still do the same thing all the time, where I look at this amazing artist that's doing something amazing, Nicholas Uribe, and I'm like, I need to buy his brushes. I need to buy the exact paints he's using. Oh, and then that will make me paint as good as him. And it never does. It never does. It never does. Have fun. Figure out something and have fun. Now, that's enough. That's enough of craziness for right now. Look at that. What the hell are you making, Chris? What is this abstract painting? Vipin, do you clean your brush after every mix? The only thing I do as far as mixtures is I wipe it out in my paper towel. Let me show you my dirty paper towel that I just got rid of. And I'm crazy with this. Like I'll fold my paper towel in certain ways so I don't get paint on me, because I hate getting paint on me. So look, I'll remove the paint from the brush as much as I can. I never have to clean my brush out in between. If I feel like I need to do that, I'll grab a different brush. The only time you need to really clean your brush out between, and you really don't need to, is like if you're going from a very, very light color to a very dark color, use a different brush. If you're going from super intense to super neutral color, these big changes in the color that you have mixed, use a different brush. If you want that same brush because you love this brush, then clean it out, right? But 90% of the time, let me show you this. I always have opinions on things like this, and I'm going to go for it, right? And you're going to be like, you don't know what you're talking about. So this brush has like this kind of orangey color in it right now. And I've wiped as much of it out on this paper towel as I can. Let me get white. Now I want pure white to go onto this palette, okay? Pure white. Like it just depends on how thick you put the paint on, right? You see how white that is? Like it's exactly the same color as the paper. You can't even see it. It's like not even there. Do I need to clean that brush out tremendously? In that instance, no. If I sat here and I mixed it up a lot, that color gets adjusted and it's, a more beige color. But learning how to kind of manipulate your brush, number one, relieves that ability to, or that need to kind of clean out between every single time. And by the way, no solvents in my studio, never ever use solvents. In fact, I haven't cleaned these brushes with soap and water in a year. You don't need to. Yeah. And that's a statement that most people are like, no, my brushes will die. No, they won't. I use safflower oil in a can. So here's my can of safflower oil. So after every session, I'll get 90% of all of the oil out of this brush in safflower oil. And then I'll get as much safflower oil out of the brush in my napkin by doing just like I do with my paint. And then I'll put it in my can of brushes. Here's my can of brushes. And they stay perfectly nice. Well, most of them do. Unfortunately, when I was working with water mixable oils, the water splayed out a lot of my new cheap brushes. They're so splayed. Look at that. But the oil keeps them nice. Just make sure you get as much of that safflower oil out as possible, right? But you do not need solvents to paint in oil. You do not need that. The only time that you would ever need solvents is if you're working with traditional oil and you want very long drawing lines at the very beginning of the painting, and then you're planning on going over it right away in a very alla prima setting. There's no replacements for solvent in that specific scenario. Every other reason you don't need solvents for. And yes, you can use cheap brushes. I don't clean my brushes out after mixed. Just don't use bargain brushes, like Dollar Tree stuff. No, I would disagree with that. Try the Dollar Tree brushes. Like I've painted with you can get really inexpensive, cheap makeup brushes. Fantastic for really blending stuff. Yeah. Eventually the hairs start to come out in these really cheap brushes, and that's fine. Not a big deal. But everything you buy, every art material that you buy has its use case. My friend Michael Orrick, wonderful landscape painter, absolutely fantastic. Most of his paintings he does with those really cheap chip brushes that you get from the hardware store. They're bristle and they're big and they fall apart easily. That's what he paints with, and they work perfectly for him in scenarios. You may get a super cheap brush and it doesn't work well in that scenario, but you're like, you know what? It's going to work great in this other scenario. It's no different than, this brush is 20 years old. It's a bristle brush I barely use, but it's perfect for scraping out paint in a certain way, getting little hairs showing in the paint. Perfect for that. I keep it for that reason alone. I mean, it's a dead brush. It's awful. It was cheap to begin with, but no, I think it doesn't matter the cost of it. And we know this because you can spend a bunch of money on a brush and it just falls apart, right? So I go inexpensive. If you're in watercolor though, don't listen to everything I said. Oil paint, Yes. I know watercolor is a whole different beast. Chris says, well, I don't think I have any hot press paper. Yeah, the reason why I do hot press paper is for the detail. Okay, let me get back to this painting real quick. What I want to do now, because I finished up this kind of expressive idea of everything, right? I've established kind of the drawing on everything. We're going super expressive. Not, I want to keep it together so it's not distracting. But now I could continue like that and just keep, blurring stuff everywhere, and it would lead to nothing. It would lead to just continuous abstraction. Now at this point, I want to say, okay, where's my focal point? Where is the center of interest that I want to focus on? And when I have that, when I establish the center of interest, it tells me where the major detail is going to go, the major texture, the major contrast, the major saturation. Everything else can kind of fall away from that. And it's going to tell me what I should kind of focus down on now. And I keep looking at this hand here. I like this hand here. And that's what I'm going to go with. And specifically, the saturation between reflected light on this finger here being reflected on the other finger. And this is where I'm going to start having some real fun. Like really, I'm going to close up a little bit, still try to think about paint and expressiveness, but close up a little bit on that drawing, okay? Lewis Wolf, never use solvents. What about water for acrylic, gouache, and watercolor? Yeah, okay. If you want to be pedantic about what a solvent actually is, Lewis, yes, water is a solvent. Thank you for that. And you're kidding, I know. Soap is a solvent. I swear. I heard there was a guy I was talking to about solvents once, and he's like, for a lot of paintings, I use soap instead of solvent. And I'm like, whoa, how did they stand up? And he's like, they're still good today. Isn't that interesting? I have never tried it, but no. Yeah, I like bargain brushes for crafting. Heck yeah, bargain brushes for crafting. Like, for instance, I bought... Oh, you guys got me off into like crazy stuff. Like there's like 50 brushes for like $2 from Amazon, these little things. And I was like, hopefully they're good, but I hate them. I really don't like them. The flexibility, the thickness of them at the tip. They're a nylon brush, and this is like a crafting brush. But it's the best brush for like removing paint in a certain way that I want, right? Or putting it on in a certain way. So it's got certain scenarios which I keep the stack of 50 of them for something. Watercolor, best brushes, Squirrel and Kolinsky. Squirrel and Kolinsky. Yeah. I use oil soap for cleaning. That's nice. Yeah, that'll work well for cleaning. I love how you have a sense of humor. I appreciate that. Hey, I tend to be pedantic too, especially on those kind of things. Definitely. Okay, so let's get into that reflected light. And here's where I can have fun in like a small expressive way. Like take Jackson Pollock and make him paint on a 2x2 canvas, right? And this is what we're going to do. I see some intensity there. I see a certain shape, and let's expressively put it down. Because expressiveness isn't about size. There's always this argument that I have with myself and that I talk to others about size of paintings. Like the importance of how big a painting is to the art world is ridiculous. And you look at all these paintings, like I always like citing Vermeer. Just priceless, only like certain amount of them left in the world or whatever. And no one wants to sell a Vermeer because it's priceless, but there's these little tiny paintings and they carry such a tremendous weight in them. They just blow apart all these other paintings that are done that could be like 10 times their size. Size doesn't matter. And yes, there's a lot of jokes I can make about that comment, but I won't. I'm not gonna do it. Not gonna do it. You guys can do it, but I'm not gonna do it. So I'm thinking expressiveness in this small size. I love the sharpness of some of these colors where it goes from just like a shadow to a very sharp edge there within the finger. And I'm down here thinking about these little smaller things now, but I want to put it down in a most expressive way that I can think. And a lot of times my hand does move. My arm moves a lot faster when I'm thinking about expressiveness. But then there's some times where I'm like, okay, this stroke has to be right the first time so I don't touch it again. And in those instances, it's you slow down, you even plan your stroke out. You do this like where they call ghosting, where you let go. You're not hitting the canvas, you're going this stroke, this stroke, this stroke. And then you go, bam, you put it down in one thing. Those are fun to do. It's intense too, because if you get it wrong, you're like, oh, it didn't work. Scrape it out, do it again. You know, then you're turning into John Singer Sargent. Definitely. I hate autocorrect. Never works when you need it and works when you don't need it. I just have canvas paper. Canvas paper is fine. So you're saying size doesn't matter. LOL. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Here's the one thing, Chris, that I say about, and everybody that's on here, that I say about materials all the time. Big pause. Big pause. Materials are unnecessary for the most part, right? They're completely unnecessary for the most part. The most important thing that you can always do forever and always is get to the darn painting. Stop, going into all this preparation that ends up being procrastination, where we're like, oh, well, I would love to start this painting, but I need that special brush, or I need that special paint, or that special whatever. Oof, I love that blue next to everything else. I need this special thing in order to get started. No, you don't. No, you just need to say, screw it and just get started. Just do it. If you want to be a better artist, the best thing you can do forever is to say, to heck with it. I have a big block of wood that's unprimed. I have a stick that I just got out of, my fireplace. I'm going to call it charcoal, and I'm going to start a drawing on this block of wood that I have. Like, stop waiting and just go for it. You discover so much more about yourself. You'll get better a lot faster. You'll build resilience with all of these like inexpensive materials. And that's the most important thing. That is the most important thing. Doing the work. Do the work. Get to it. Build that discipline. Forget about the materials. And you're like, Chris, shut up. Oh my God. He's like just telling me about how to run my life. I just want to paint. Just want to paint. These strokes that I'm doing here, you see this? There's like, I know that reference is really small, but right under that masculine looking hand, that shadow, the most important part of that hand. Like everything else could be very expressive, but if I get these like shadows right here, like the drawing of them, I think is going to be really important, or at least, somewhat of the placement. Like that one needs to go over a little bit. It's going to say finger, like the tip of that finger is there. Definitely. Definitely. Like there's certain moments within the references that we're looking at that are just so absolutely important that we have to slow down and say, okay, that's important. And the harder part of painting is recognizing those moments. Because usually to get there, it just, you have to paint for a while. You have to learn through painting. Whoa, lots of messages. So what solvent do you put the brush in? Safflower oil. It's not a solvent. It's just an oil. It's a non-drying oil. Well, it's a semi-drying oil. And don't ask me about any other oils. Safflower, you can go to the grocery store and get it cheaply. It's fine. A lot of people go, what about baby oil? What about this oil? But no. Just get to work. get to work, please. Safflower oil is fine. This I got from the grocery store, regular safflower oil. It's a semi-drying oil. Why am I saying that? Because if you do like I do, I clean out my brushes. Like this is a brush I cleaned out yesterday, right? Safflower oil. And then make sure that you get all the oil out of there before you start painting the next day, right? Because it's a semi-drying oil. If you get too much of that oil into your paint, it'll just sit there for 6 months, couple years, something like that before it decides to actually dry. And that's why safflower oil. And I choose that because it's inexpensive. Now you could go get the safflower oil by Gamblin if you want to get like the artist brand of that, but I don't think it's different than what you buy at the grocery store. Definitely it's different. But I've been painting with grocery store brand safflower oil for years now, and I've had no problems with my paintings, except for those few that completely died for some reason. And I have no idea why. Just kidding. Just kidding. But I do that to get away from the solvent. I mean, if you don't want to deal with the safflower oil, just wash your brushes out after every session in soap and water. I used to do that. They'll splay out a little bit faster because of the water, but there's your solvent. That's how you clean up brushes. DHMM, does the art shop sell safflower oil? It's safflower, SAFFLOWER oil. Yes, it does. Or should I just work in acrylic? And to mention the gesso, it's quite complicated before you actually explain what you mean by that statement. It's quite complicated before you actually. What size paper is this? Oh, this is 6x9. Or should I just work in acrylic? I'm very sensitive to smells. I know of a lot of people, a lot of artists that have expressed ailments that have come from working with solvents over the years that have made them even more susceptible to smells and things. There's some people that are like any little smell is just really terrible for them. It's really difficult for them to function. Like I'll get this huge headache, and a lot of people are more sensitive. And I know the effect of solvents. Even the Gamvar, which is probably the best, quote unquote, best solvent out there, it doesn't have a smell to it. But even those best solvents, I know that there's a fume in the air that they're going to cause. And so I'm super careful about it. You'll talk to other artists and they're like, no, don't listen to that guy. Solvents are fine, It's like the people that come to the house and they go, hey, we're going to spray in this tree for bugs. And I'm like, no, I don't want it. But it's fine. I mean, it's fine. I mean, as long as it dries, just don't have your cats out here. And the guy's wearing a mask around his face and he's telling me that they don't get it on you when it's wet, but it's okay. I'm like, no, this is the two incongruent statements you got here, bub. No, I don't want it anywhere near me. Like, what kind of effect does that have on you in 20 years from now, right? This is what I'm thinking about. Anyway, but I'm very specific and particular about that. Small studio. I don't have a lot of money, right? So this is me. I'm not sure what you meant by it's quite complicated before you actually, but yeah, 6x9 paper. I like painting small. Okay. This finger, that's all I'm focusing on here and what's around it. Thinking about just smaller expressive transitions. And when we think about expression, when we think about brushwork, movement, energy, these kind of words, we can have an energetic arm that moves around a lot, but the paint that is actually put on the canvas that is down there, when we think about what energetic means in that sense, like regardless of how it was put down, is these strokes that have, angles to them. They're put down simply, they're put down once. Um, you can feel kind of the brushwork in them. A lot of the strokes are usually longer, and I'm being very subjective here on what I feel expression is. Expressive work, maybe they have intense colors is a bit more expressive than like gray colors. Although I've seen black and white paintings that, is based on the shape of all the brush strokes that get put down, and they're very expressive. We're moving into that kind of mode of painting with this. And when we establish, like I did at the very beginning of this stream, the reason why I'm doing something, it gives an indication for the rest of the painting. It gives me an indication of how to move through every single stroke. If I'm thinking expressiveness, I'm thinking about paint first. Every single stroke I put down that I get ready to make, it is translated through that idea that we established at the beginning. And if I put a brushstroke down that doesn't meet that criteria, then I reassess and make a change, maybe scrape it off and do it again, something like that. But you have to have that definition at the beginning and an understanding of what it means to you. I think that's the most important thing within this. And it's a terminology that I use all the time. I'll say everything is most important. So, grain of salt and all that, right? But establishing that, I think, is really, really, really important. Gives us the way to go. We don't get lost in the painting anymore. We know exactly what we're wanting to do. And especially when I want to go quickly and put things down exactly, I need that definition to tell me this is where to go next. This is where to go next. Being more influenced by what we're looking at and translating, like this idea of translation, where we pass, it comes in, our reference comes in through our eyes, and we look at it and we see what's there. And then we have this ability to say, I'm going to do it exactly like I see it. I'm going to focus deeply on this naturalistic representation, this exact photorealistic representation of what we're doing. Or how can I do that super simple and just hint at the idea so that it's paint first, right? We're thinking a little bit more abstractly. It's paint first and then the object second. I've talked about this before where, you look at a painting across the gallery and it's a mountain. It's a beautiful mountain. Clyde Asperberg painted this gorgeous mountain. And you're like, wow, that's amazing. And then you walk up to it, you're 3 feet away, and it just devolves into nothing but paint. But even the paint is beautiful. You're like, look at those strokes, how interesting and gorgeous those are. And this is what we're thinking about more, right? If all art was how much you can make it look like the photo, it would be boring. It would be so boring. I love that there's that side of the art itself, that a lot of people go deep into that, as photorealistic as possible. I love that people do that, but I also love the Pollocks and Rothkos and Diebenkorns, Alice Neal, Anne Gale, all of these artists that I look at that I just admire for their ability to kind of break away and say, guess what? My focus is not on that anymore. It's different. I want to focus on this idea of paint first, and then that's it. Maybe that's it. So I'm looking at this area. You see this subtle transition. Hopefully you see it. Yeah, it's like the back. And there's this subtle transition. Wow, that's really bright. Compared to what I'm seeing, that's too bright. No, too dark. changing the ISO on my camera so you can actually see what I'm seeing. Yeah, that's a bit closer to the value range. Bit closer. But okay. Some very soft transition in this where it goes from light to shadow. Right on that back there. So if I take this image and I make it bigger, right on the back, right where that masculine hand to the right of the thumb, and then even on that arm, the horizontal arm, there's a very soft transition. Now, if I'm being very expressive here, a lot of sharp edges, and then I'm running into that very soft area. Okay, how am I going to treat that? How am I going to treat that? Let's think about it. Let's think about this for a second. You know, we don't have to rush into everything. Sometimes it's better if we're not rushing into everything. If we sit here and think about how am I going to put that down? You know, it's like we'll look at a John Singer Sargent painting and think that he just tossed that painting off in like, you know, a couple hours in one day. What we don't see is the fact that he repainted that head 26 times because the singular brushstroke looking exactly the way he wanted it didn't happen 25 times, right? So we don't see that. So there's a lot of deliberation in these master artists and a lot of thought that goes into every single little thing that they put down. The more artists that I watch paint and hear about how they paint, that the more it becomes a more cerebral approach to things. Of course, the artists I like, and there's a lot of artists that like remove themselves from this cerebral approach and just go for it, right? And they can make some good stuff. But I'm faced with that area, which I'm avoiding right now. I'm talking about it, but avoiding it. Scared of it. How am I going to treat that? I know. Okay. Here's what I want to try. There's two ways of softening that edge. It's quite complicated before you. Okay. Actually paint. Oh, yeah. Are you talking about the image itself? Yeah, it's a very complicated image. I did that intentionally. I wanted all of that stuff going on, try and bring that into the painting. Thank you for repeating that. Hopefully I got it right. And sorry if I didn't. So there's two ways of softening things. I could go in here with a soft brush and I could do this kind of blend, right? Even with my finger and get this blend. Or I can go in with more expressive brushwork and focus more on the transition of value and color to make it look like there is a blend there. What do you mean, Chris? What do you mean? Okay, let's start on the lighter side right here. So that is fairly warm, close to the orange, and pretty light. So right here, because it's, yeah, let's start with here. And I want to think about this in an expressive way. And I'm painting over dark paint, so it's going to get darker. It'll bring in some of that paint. And I don't like that. I want more of the paper showing through here. So I'm going to scrape out. Kind of screwed up there. That should be just white paper, just like here. But that's okay. It's okay. See if I can bring it back. Again, this is, you know, I'm being expressive. As expressive as I can. I'm planning that some of that's going to happen. So we have that kind of light color, but then we get a little bit darker, and I'm not going to blend. I'm going to put down a value that's a little bit darker here. Oops, that is not down well enough. There, and then a little bit darker, maybe a little bit more saturated, and then here. And it's like they're separate brushstrokes. They're separate stages of value transitioning. And there's a coolness that's happening in some places too. But we can transition into, if I was 10 feet away from this, where it would blend together because those values are pretty close to each other. The saturation and the temperature is pretty close. But I love up here how it gets sharp. There's like that sharp edge. I believe the back of that bra is casting a shadow down and it sharpens up. I'm being too timid, too timid. Like I barely put that paint down. I just like very subtly touch the canvas and I don't want to do that. I want to let go a bit. The more I tighten up, the more I clench my butt cheeks, the less expressive this is going to be. I can plan out these strokes specifically. I can still do that. I can still plan them out. I can ghost them, but put them down once and confidently. Confidence, that's a good word. Confidence turns into expressiveness in a lot of ways. At least I feel. Yeah, better. And it transitions a bit, but kind of harshly. It does transition a bit harshly, and that's fine. I want to go right up into this white. I want to be interested. I want to see this as hands like 30 feet away. You know, when I'm far away from this painting, I want to see all the hands. I want to be able to tell that there's thumbs that are different from fingers, that there's an arm there, that these fingers are going into certain directions and they have certain shadow shapes on them. And then other ones have different shadow shapes on them. And we can tell that throughout. But then as soon as I get closer to it, it just begins to devolve. Every step I take closer to this painting, it would devolve into paint. And that's what I want to try and grab. Straight white. Oof. Straight white. Yes. Bigger brush. I need a bigger brush. It could be because I'm getting too like a small brush that's causing me to kind of tighten up a bit too. There's several things will get you to tighten up. Smaller brushes will always get you to tighten up because you're doing this little tiny thing, right? That kind of goes against what I said earlier about, you know, being able to be expressive in a small space. And I think we can do that. It's harder, a lot harder, because I tend to tighten up with it. But also if you're being too timid with your paint as well, like if you're going, oh, I need to save money, I don't want to use that much paint. So, or, you know, someone told you to buy this super expensive paint. Michael Harding, I'm looking at you. And, you know, it's like $30 a tube. And you're not going to put out a bunch of paint. You're not going to use the paint that the amount of paint that the painting needs. And you're going to be a bit too timid with it. That's another reason why I think inexpensive paints are the way to go. Rembrandt would step in here, buy the cheapest stuff on the market, and make a painting that would, you know, every other artist on the planet would just cry over, right? Okay, I like that. A lot of expression in there. Does turn that form a bit sharper edge at the top. Pretty nice. I need to move this whole line over. That needs to go over to there. More space on there on the side. And I want to scrape that background down. The nice thing about, two things here. About the hot press paper is how smooth it is. You can see how I can get, you know, definite marks and sharp edges with this palette knife. And only on a very smooth surface can you get that. And then when you do like a PVA size or a GAC 100 over your paper or the surface you're working on, and make it less absorbent, you can change value within what you're working on, not just by mixing up paint, but by pulling paint off and showing more of that paper through or that canvas through whatever you're painting on, right? And I think that's really nice because it's a completely different effect than adding titanium white. This is a very grayish color here, warmish gray in this shadow. It's like a cast. It's a cooler cast shadow, but it's hitting a lot of skin that is warm. So it's definitely cooler than anything else. I want it lighter than that. And I am out of white again. And this brush is falling apart, and that's fine. I'm going to leave bristles in there. It's part of the expressiveness, right? That's what happens with those cheap brushes. Don't be lazy, Chris. Sometimes I'm too lazy and I don't put out the paint when I need it, and it affects how I'm painting. And I'm like, I can just kind of mix, really kind of try and mine as much of that paint out of there as I can and just deal with it. No, Chris, no, you need more paint. Put the paint down. That'll probably work. It's got a sharp edge to it. Sharp edge. Yeah, better. Ooh, and I like how right as we get into that light side, it kind of changes. Nice. Simply done, expressively done. That's what I'm thinking about. And I've moved too far away from my center of interest. So let's come back. Let's bring it back. It's like when I'm talking too much, I always have to think, okay, bring it back, Chris. Bring it back to, the point of what you're trying to do. This is the reason why I started this stream, guys, is because I could talk forever. And I was looking at video games streams. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. Especially for the game that I play. I play a lot of Guild Wars too, so that's me. But I went to see artists that do streams, and a lot of the artists that I saw, actually the top streaming artist on Twitch is Bob Ross, which is wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. But a lot of the artists that I saw streaming where, they just turn on the camera and, don't say anything. Just watch me paint. And I'm like, oh, I'm an artist. And even if I'm interested in your art, I think that's boring. It's so boring. But when I was watching some of the top streamers with their games, the one thing that they could do was talk forever about everything related to the game. And I was like, yeah, this is what I find interesting. And I was like, I want to do a stream because I can talk forever. And everybody has left my stream now because, maybe, I don't know who's watching, but everybody's like, yeah, you can talk forever. I'll put you on mute so I can just watch you paint. Hold on one second, guys. Oh, did you bring, oh, yummy. Thank you. I've been just delivered something that smells fantastic. Oh, I love my partner. They're amazing. Absolutely amazing. Doobie the Cat, have you ever mixed your own paints? I think it would be good to learn to understand the process. Yes. Oh, yes. If you really want to do it, Doobie, try it. You can try it. I always have an opinion on stuff, right? Here's my opinion on that. Oh, Chris, you're still there. Good. On my opinion on mixing your own paints. You can do it, and it's kind of fun in a lot of ways. It's still procrastination, in my opinion. You just get right to the point, Chris, and be a jerk about it. It's still procrastination. Like, we get so deep into like this idea of art materials that it kind of usurps the work to do the artwork. Okay. And I've done it. Like I would go buy those tubes, the tubes that don't have anything in them. I would, and even to the point, like what I would agree with, would be kind of nice because I've been wanting to do this as well, is going to like, and I could have done this with the gambling paints that I gave up because they're too thick for me. But finding a paint that you really like or a color that you really like, but you hate the viscosity of it, like it doesn't move around as much or moves around too much or whatever. And you're like, oh man, this is my palette. I love this palette, but what the pain in the ass that I have with it is mixing up the medium in those paints all the time, like at the beginning of every session. And I want to make that a bit faster. I want to streamline my process a bit more. So let's go ahead and mix up though, like take like the Winsor Newton Witten or whatever you have, mix all of it up into a big pile with your medium and then put it into a new tube. That's fantastic. Like that's something that will get you inspired to get back to painting. And the focus of that is about the painting itself. And maybe making your own paints would do that as well. But number one, you have to be very, very careful about it because if you go out and you like, yeah, I want lead white, so I'm going to go get some oxidized lead and mix it with linseed oil. You better have like the most Tyvek suit protective layer. And I'm not kidding here. I'm not joking about that because lead will kill you. Lead will kill you. So you have to be careful with those things because they're dust particles, right? It's like people that work with charcoal a lot and the charcoal gets everywhere and they breathe it in. Eventually their lungs get full of charcoal, and it causes big problems. So you have to be careful with that stuff. If you want to do it, you can do it. But then there's this tremendous amount of preparation that you run into with just mixing your own paints. And then if you run out of it, you're like, oh gosh, I love that paint. Now I got to mix it up before I can get to this painting. So it can turn into that. It did that for me where it was, I was doing more making of the product than I was making my own product, the paint itself. And then a lot of the times I found that, the paint right out of the tube was better, even the student brands. And it goes beyond just making paint as well. Do I have to use hot press paper? I'll talk about that in a second, Chris. Why I use hot press paper. The other thing about making your own materials, it can easily kind of grow into, I'm going to make my own easel. And of course, I do this still. Like a lot of my paintings, I'll make my own panels for them just to save money, but it's a pain in the butt. I mean, I went to 6x9 because it is somewhat of a standard size and it gets away from me needing to have to make those panels so people can just like, I'll ship this out, just the paper, and it's up to them to find a standard size frame for it. But there has been so many artists, and if Matthew's on here, he'll tell you, like I got on him a couple times about he made this beautiful studio, which I haven't seen pictures of it yet. This beautiful studio. But I was always like saying, Matt, how much painting have you done? Have you done any painting, Matt? And I don't know how long it took, but it was months before he got back to painting. And so, within that time, I made like 50, 60 paintings, right? And I've progressed as an artist because of it. But every now and then I'll get into these projects where I'm like, oh, I need to make this pochade box or something that I think would work perfectly for, something that I'm doing, like going out and painting, with Urban Sketchers or something. And it is positive, it's motivating, and maybe I don't feel like painting, so that is like the replacement for it. But just be careful it doesn't turn you into like a paint manufacturer and not a painter, right? You got to be careful of that. Make sure it doesn't pull you away from the most important thing, which is expressing yourself on the canvas and telling the stories that you want on your canvas. Yeah. I find that tremendously important. This one stroke is important. Oof, I wish it was whiter. I wish that was just the paper. Let me see how much I can scrape back to it. Oof. I'm loving how this is kind of feeling moving through this, where it's kind of like a controlled expression. Controlled expression. And determining how much I want to control the expression, how much I need to move away from it to get the drawing back. Like there's this dark stripe going through that finger. I want to bring that back. Let's just put white over it. But keeping a little bit of it, still kind of nice. This is going to be a cool painting. Already, I'm happy with it. Matthew, took forever and I work full time, right? Matthew, you got to speak to that about making your own stuff while I answer the hot press paper question. Do you have to use hot press paper? Heck no. My opinion, here's what you got to do, Chris. I'm going to tell you exactly what to do. No, I'm kidding. I'm going to give you an option, Chris, and it's up to you to decide it. But try hot press, get it as cheap as you can. You know, it's all about just how flat it is. That's why hot press paper. I just do it because I don't want to deal with the texture of the paper. Try like cold press watercolor paper, has more texture. Try burlap sack. Try painting on wood. Try painting on a panel. Try it all. Yeah. You know, but start somewhere. Start simply. Start with a suggestion that you think is pretty interesting, right? Okay, let's start with a hot press watercolor paper. Begin to do like 5 or 6 paintings on it. Okay, you know, more than that. Do 20 paintings, and then through that, maybe you do through the 3rd painting or maybe the 20th painting, you go, I don't like this. It's too smooth. Let me try something a bit more textural. That's what you want. To get to that point where you are making decisions about what you like and you don't like. Your preferences as an artist, so important. That's what we want to get to. Okay. And understand those as being something that's, you know, that's important to you as an artist, but also malleable at any point in time. Don't say, I always do this just because, you know, I found it to be, you know, fun for me. Right? I tend to want to every now and then kind of question my ideals. Someone will come up and go, no, you're wrong, dude. You know what's better? Burlap sacks. Just paint directly on the most textural thing you can paint on with no gesso or no nothing. I'm like, okay, let's try this. Let's go for it. And then, you know, maybe I go, wow, this is sending me down a brand new direction that's amazing, that I love. Or we say, yep, this further solidifies my understanding of how I like to paint, and I do like smooth textures. Super important. Haha, that bad. LOL. True. I've had one incident of high lead exposure. That was enough. Oh God, yes. Right on, thanks. Of course, Matthew says, of course, when I do thing like design my own custom stencils and hand paint the concrete floor, it tends to take a while. Like, wow. You know, it's got to be like this super creative room that you're in though now, which is fantastic. Like that, hopefully now that you step into that area that you can't help but be creatively motivated. And maybe, you know, 10 years from now, you look back at it and you go, wow, this space has turned me into the most creative person I could be. Yes, it took forever to get off the ground, but because of it, I've gone down this road that has made me more creative, you know, and more productive, right? Artists don't like that word productive a lot of times. Productive? It sounds like work. I thought it was all supposed to be fun all the time. Yeah, for the most part. Yeah. Hmm. There was a story that I had an idea of that I was thinking of, and now it just left my brain because I was talking about, having. Oh yes, I remember now. Okay, the same with like subject matter. When we're talking, Chris, about materials, when I say, try different materials, try different things, excuse me, figure out ways that you like to paint and go with that. That's going to be too light. Don't put that down, Chris. You know that. You know that. Good job getting away from it. Good job thinking about it. That's dark enough. Oof, it was too dark. Damn it. No, that's good. That's good. It's good. But subject matter can run into that as well. You could, I was doing a lot of streams like years ago, 23, 22 or 23, and I was doing some digital stuff. I was using Krita doing digital work, which is, I love Krita. It was fantastic for digital work. But I was trying to do, and it was like a portrait that I was working on. And it was, I was so into it. I was like, oh, this is going to be awesome. I love it. And then I had so much trouble with it. It was not working. It was just not happening at all. I had so much issues with it to a point where it led to like a midlife crisis, right? Something like that. I'm being very theatrical about that, right? Midlife crisis. Um, but it did lead me down this road where I started thinking that everything I was doing, these figures, these portraits, this digital stuff that I was working on, was so referential. I was asking, like, Chris, is this you? Is this really who you are? Like the painter that you have made yourself to be? Is everything authentic directly out of your head? Or is it so dependent upon the tremendous amount of imagery and craziness that we get bombarded with, the fire hose of social media, that we look at my painting and I'm like, I don't even see myself in it. And so what I did is I said, okay, well, I'm a daily artist. I'm not going to stop. By that time I was into thousands of days already in a row. So I said, okay, let's do a test here. This could take a while, but let's do something different. So I started doing these little small paintings. It was like 6x6 panels, little pieces of wood. There you go. I was painting on little pieces of wood, right? With a gray acrylic gesso primed over them. And I started doing completely different subjects, little landscapes with maybe a little figure in there. And I was like, yeah, let's try this, something different. Let's change it up a bit. Okay. And then we ended up moving to Hawaii, Honolulu for a while. And that kind of was a big, that move was so huge. Like moving across an ocean is crazy. It's so hard to do a move like that. And so that was a big interruption, although I kept doing my daily art, of course, every single day, mostly sketches and things like that. I lost a lot of motivation, was doing the little 2-inch by 2-inch sketches for a while of just abstract shapes and just trying like different things. The point of the story is I was getting away from what I did normally and what I thought was me. And then while I was in Hawaii, I was showing on the fence at next to the zoo, and I started doing sunset landscapes, sunrises, and then I started painting more landscapes around. And I was like, let me try pet portraits. I did a few pet portraits, ended up figuring out that I hated them. Right. I got bored of the landscapes, and then it was like a year and a half, maybe 2 years later, I came back to that same painting that I was doing digitally. I was like, okay, let's revisit this. Let's revisit it, see where I'm at. And as soon as I drew it out and everything, but as soon as I started that painting, like the first 2 hours I'm painting that portrait, it felt like coming home. It was like, this is what I've meant to do the rest of my life. Figures and portraits. I was so just bowled over into like the flow state within painting that face that I knew that, okay, this is right for me. This is who I am. And I think, it's the same with materials, it's the same with subject matter. You decide, oh, this is who I am, this is who I want to be, but then maybe step away from it for a little bit to make sure, is it really you? Is that you coming out of that brush, right? And I think that was probably one of the most important parts of my life, honestly. My artistic life was doing that, just stepping away from it all and then eventually coming back to it after a long time. I was trying all kinds of different stuff. I really just let go. It was very cathartic to do that, to let go, to really find if what I was doing was what was important to me. Not important to me. That was wrong. What was I, if what I was doing was me, if I could look, and I don't know a better way to describe this, but if I could look at what I was painting and answer the question, Chris, is that you? Not meaning, is it me being painted there, like my self portrait? Does it look like me? No, in a more psychological sense of the idea. Does it feel like I put myself into it? Was it authentic? Was it, you could be a bit more poetic about it and say, is it from the heart, right? And that was great. And now I look at paintings, and I still go to landscapes sometimes, do urban sketchers or whatever close to me, and connect with friends around here, other artists, and have fun doing the landscape or still life. I went over to a friend's house who does classes, and I helped her with her computer. And then we painted a still life together, me and two other artists. And it was a lot of fun. You know, it isn't like we have to get deep into like, I only do this or I only do that. But finding, ourselves, I think is is fantastic. Yeah, and however you decide to do that. And there's so many levels to that because I talk about Michael Orwick a lot. He's a good friend of mine that I talk to almost once a week. He's so busy with family stuff right now that I don't get to talk to him that often. Oh, see you later, Chris. Sorry if I didn't see your comment before you left, but thank you so much for the questions, Chris. Um, I talk about him a lot because he does a lot of things very differently than I do, and it's fantastic. Like looking at that difference in artists, like how he makes things work that is different from my sensibilities, and it's perfect for him. Like I wouldn't do it, but it's perfect for him, right? So he's a landscape painter. He does commissions. Like I've had nothing but problems with commissions, right? So I don't do commissions. I usually say no on commissions all the time, right? But that's where he mainly gets a lot of his money, and he'll make decisions based on what he paints, but based on, in a lot of cases, the money that he can get from it. Like he'll do certain subject matter that he knows that can go into a gallery and will sell pretty quickly. I would never do that. Like I don't make my decisions based on, the money that I could get from it. Um, that is specific to, the artwork that I do, the subject matter that I do, and the paint, how I paint, right? But as far as like when you get into like marketing and all these other things that deal with like promoting yourself, it's a little bit different. Like I put on a different hat when the painting's done and I need to show it to people, and I get to show it to people. It's a better language there. I get to show it to people. So it's kind of a lot of my sensibility, And well, it's definitely a lot of, and not kind of, but it is all my sensibility. But understanding that for ourselves, you could say, Chris, no, that's not what I do. I mean, I want to do um, pet portraits and commissions and things like that and provide a service to my community. And that sounds amazing to me. And use it specifically for monetary concerns, right? And try and make money off of it as much as I can. Fantastic. Make those decisions. Know yourself a bit more, but don't make that decision just because someone tells you, well, if you want to make money off of it, you have to do this, or you have to do that, or you have to do the same thing over and over again. That way people know you. Put yourself in a box. Oh my gosh. I'm just rambling right now. Sorry. Okay. Back to the painting. Where am I at? Time frame. Ooh, almost 3 hours. You know I'm super interested in what I'm doing when I go up to 3 hours. Let's turn this to 4K real quick. Come on, you can do it. There you go. Yay. A little bit more detail being sent to you, hopefully. Bit more information coming to you. What is this craziness, Chris? What is this that you're doing? This is not a figure. This is abstraction. I think this is a wonderful base for some amazing painting that's going to be coming along. Yeah. I could see painting like this for a long time. You know, not doing this painting for a long time, but doing a lot of paintings that kind of start this way and then really kind of function along this line of brushwork and mark making first. Yeah. So at the beginning, I was talking about, you know, how I set up a document on all these paintings that I do. And I talk about why I'm doing it, the purpose behind it, focal points, things like that. And then every day, I usually have some kind of commentary, or I need to have some kind of commentary that talks about, you know, what I was going through during that session of the day, because my paintings take multiple days, right? And that way I can reference it in the future, look back at it, understand a little bit more about myself. And that's one thing I'm going to do right now. So I'm going to look at what I got down. So, and usually I run through like the same similar questions. What went well? What needs work? Okay, I'll do it here. What went well? What needs work? And how can I improve on the next session? Those three things. Always starting out with what went well. So the expressiveness of all of that, just throwing it down quickly, I feel the structure of this hand already with just that little bit. Like I feel that that has a structure. So that's really nice. That's my focal point. I feel the roundness of this kind of back here that feels round. But it's also separates itself in the way that it's been built up from everything else. It feels a bit smoother. So that difference in kind of working up the paint, like it's not all the same brush strokes. Yeah, so I love that transition from structure in this way, hard edge structure, to like a softer structure. Like we're getting more of an understanding of, you know, it's like we're moving through the fog and we're understanding more that it's like hand or back or some kind of body shape, right? So like that. What needs work? Definitely this whole hand down here. Yeah, it has some idea of what's there. I put it down quickly, maybe a little bit too purple, but needs more there. Here, this down here, I just put all this down as an understanding of it needs to not be important, but it's actually, you know, a but down here, but it does need interest. So we can say unimportant down here, but it could still be interestingly unimportant. I know, like painting, we will always deal with this where it's like Zen. We have two opposites that come together, you know, interesting, yes, yet unimportant at the same time. Like it could be interesting paint when you're actually looking at it, but so unimportant that it doesn't overshadow the focal point. So definitely. Same with this hand. Need to figure that out. You know, another thing I can definitely improve upon when I do this is really demarcate these areas, like these fingers here, this where the light hits them. I wish that was just blank paper. Left that blank, like this arm, you know, even a little bit going into it, like the light on those fingers, that would have been much better to prepare for, you know, subsequent things that I'm going to be doing there. So I could prepare better that way. How I can improve on the next painting or the next, well, I basically said how I can improve on those. But in the next session, I'm going to continue from at my focal point. I think that's the best. I'm working smaller, thinking about these little tiny transitions and ideas, and every like inch of this should have its like interest within, like it should be like an abstract, interesting painting all in itself on every little inch, but also describe finger, hand, you know, knuckle, tendon, whatever. So have all that together, but stay there and think that, and then move through the painting. Definitely. Yo, Home Skillet, another person online. Home Skillet, you got to be from like Kentucky or someplace. Like back in the day, I would say that when I was a kid. Home Skillet, fantastic. But you came in right at the end of the entire stream. I've been going for like 3 hours now, dude. Yeah. But good painting so far. The start of this is great. Everything that I wanted to do is happening within it right now. So happy with it. I'm glad you're here, another person online, even though you came in at the end. That's great. I'll be here tomorrow around the same time, around 10 o'clock or so. I don't plan these because my days are all different and it depends on what I'm doing. But thank you so much for being part of my stream. Thanks for all the questions that I got, all the conversation that's part of that. Please ask questions. Go to my website, chrisbevan.com. Actually, if I go to this screen, it shows it right down there, chrisbevan.com, like heaven, but with a B. If you want to support me, there's several ways you can do it. Like and subscribe on YouTube. That's like the most simple thing you can do. Or you can go to my website, sign up for my newsletter. That's another thing you can do. Buy my paintings, you know, monetary support, that kind of thing is always good. Or just show up, ask questions, and be part of the conversation. And yeah, I appreciate you guys so much. It's so awesome. Like because you show up, like I spend forever on this. It's just more interesting with you here. Thanks, Doobie. Thanks, Matthew. Appreciate you guys. Have a wonderful rest of your Friday into your fantastic weekend, guys. Bye-bye.